everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Lysha. As you know, I am the owner of Lysha Be Creative, and today I am back with another tumbler, and this one is again inspired by one of my favorite Halloween movies of all time, Hocus Pocus. And so I'm going to show you how I did this sort of burn pages look tumbler. It's something that I've actually never done, and I was able to try this in my Facebook group first, and so I wanted to be able to show you guys here on YouTube how I was able to do this sort of Hocus Pocus burn pages tumbler, but also like that black flame candle look. So of course, everything I use in today's tutorial will be listed and linked down in the description box down below. Be sure to check that description box out for discount codes as well as links to all of my social media. Before you leave, be sure to give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I upload videos every Tuesday and Saturday, and you do not want to miss what is to come. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial. Okay, so as I mentioned, I did do a good portion of this tutorial in my Facebook group. You are more than welcome to join that. That is Lysha Be Creative Community right on Facebook. We do live tutorials every Friday, and so I really showed some different techniques on how you can get the burned pages look and or distress and make your actual book pages or printed pages look more vintage and old. So with these three items, I actually got these from Google. I just did a Google search of like Hocus Pocus images and, you know, black flame candle, the life potion, and I found these already kind of vintage looking papers that I decided to grab up. All I did was print it on regular computer paper, just put it on a Google Doc sheet and then printed them. And so it already has that kind of distressed look, and we're going to do a little bit more distressing, if you will, but really what we're going to be doing is doing mostly burning the edges of these. So I'm starting by just ripping the edges. Since I did cut this out of printer paper, I want to make the edges look kind of irregular and look like it's been ripped out of a book versus printed from a printer. So I'm just going to kind of rip the edges to give it kind of that irregular look. And then we're just going to take the barbecue lighter I have here and be able to kind of burn those edges so that you can't see kind of that white edge from the printer paper. So now that those are all ripped and they look great, we're going to go ahead and just use the lighter and just very carefully kind of burn those edges. So be careful when you are burning your edges. You want to make sure that obviously you don't get too much flame. Make sure you have a little water on hand. I do have some up in the corner that we were using to dip the coffee tea bag in to give our actual printed images kind of more of that vintage or brownish look. But make sure you have water or something on hand. That is going to be super helpful because sometimes the barbecue lighter gets a little too far and you burn more than you want. I wanted kind of just a slight singed look on the edges. I didn't want there to be too much happening around the edges because the more you burn the edges, you will notice that that will start to kind of fall apart as you handle it. So I wanted just kind of a slight scorched or burned edge and not kind of like a whole huge scorch mark. So now I'm going to be putting these on my tumbler. So I prepped a 16-ounce plump from the Steel Magnolia company. And because of the size that I printed my papers, I did have to rip even farther than I had originally decided and burn those edges that I've now ripped. And so I definitely would pick out your cup first, do all of your sizing on your cup and how you want everything to be placed. That way you can make sure to kind of have all your prep work with your pages done before you go to apply everything. So now that I've burned all the edges, I'm now just going to start to place things on the cup. And so in my head, I know I'm going to have like different layers of these, you know, pages, so to speak, but I also am going to be incorporating a drip around the top. So I want to make sure that I'm staying away from the top portion of my cup because I know a lot of that will be covered up by a drip, but I want to make sure that the way that I'm placing these things, they're able to be read. So I'm starting with the life potion page here, and I've just ripped that again into two sections, and I'm just going to place those kind of in like a crisscross pattern. I'm not so worried about some of the words being read on the life potion as far as like, you know, the recipe, so to speak, but I do want the words life potion to be read because that's a big part of the movie, and so I want that to be kind of a little bit of the forefront and being able to be seen around some of the other pages that are going to be layered on top. So I've just taken a bit of Mod Podge, a very thin layer of Mod Podge along the back, kind of like what you did in grade school with, you know, like a glue stick when you used to do those little, you know, cut and paste sheets. So just a thin layer on the back before you apply it to your tumbler. You don't want to do too much. If you do too much Mod Podge, you're going to wrinkle your paper, which means that it could end up ripping while you're trying to apply it. So just a thin layer, enough to get it to stick to your cup. Don't do too much Mod Podge because, again, you don't want your papers to rip, and we want to be able to seal these and not have any wrinkles within those pages. So I'm just going to continue to layer these. You can do this however you want. You also don't have to use pages that you've printed on printer paper. You can use a book. You can use pages from the internet. I know a lot of people kind of go to using pages from the internet because obviously then you're not actually ripping apart a book, but you can do it both ways. I've seen it done both ways. I tested this in my group and we did it with an old book that I had and tried that on kind of a sample cup, and it all really works really well. I will say that pages from a book are probably just as thin as your printer paper, so it's about the same kind of medium, so to speak. So I'm going to continue to just layer the rest of these. So you'll see I have a black flame candle image, which is going to be kind of the forefront or the front part of the tumbler, and then on the back half I'm going to have the images of the Wanted Sanderson Sisters poster on the back half. That'll take up some of that white space on the back. So I'm going to finish applying the rest of these images. Again, thin layer of Mod Podge, then literally apply it right on your tumbler, kind of smoothing from the inside out, kind of like you would with a piece of vinyl and transfer paper. And then I will kind of show you what this looks like before we move on to the next step. So now that we've applied all the pages that we wanted to apply, we're going to do our layers of Mod Podge. So I'm going to do 3 to 4 thin layers of Mod Podge until all of my paper is completely sealed. Okay, so our pages are now completely sealed on the cup. It has got a nice seal on that with all those layers of Mod Podge, and everything is dry. And so now we're just going to kind of base paint the white areas of the cup. So obviously I base painted my cup with a flat white spray paint, and I want to cover that up a little bit with a little bit of this paint mixed together in order to give this kind of a base color look. So I've mixed just a little bit of white acrylic paint and the Arteza acrylic paint called Raw Sienna. It's kind of like a bronzy, tannish color that I've mixed with the white paint. I've gotten kind of like this off-white eggshell color that I'm just going to use to base paint all of the white areas. So I start with a makeup wedge just to kind of fill up some of those larger spaces, and then I'll go in with a fine brush because I want to make sure that I don't get any of this paint on top of the images that I already have on the cup. So using this fine paintbrush is going to help me get super close to those edges without covering them, because I do still want those burned edges to be very, very prominent and be able to be seen. So I'm just going to finish kind of base painting this. I am going to go in with another color over top, a couple of alcohol inks over top to give this one kind of whole unanimous color, so to speak. But I wanted to start with a base paint first before I go in and add those alcohol inks on top, just to kind of make sure that everything was going to get covered and look the same tone as I begin to add those additional colors. So again, I'm going to finish base painting this. I'll let this dry, and then we're going to go in right over top with another couple of alcohol ink colors to blend this even further. Okay, so my paint is now dry. It only took about 15 to 20 minutes to be completely dry, and now we're going to move on to adding some alcohol ink over top of those painted areas to start to blend the background into the images that I have slapped on there with some Mod Podge. So I'm taking a few makeup wedges and I'm just going to kind of cut that flat edge side and just make it a little bit more rounded so that you don't get any of those harsh lines when I am using these to apply my alcohol inks. And I'm going to be using 2 alcohol inks. I have honeycomb as well as butterscotch that I'm going to be using a little bit in a couple of medicine cups here with the makeup wedges so that I can blend those onto the cup. So taking my makeup wedge, I am going to start with one color. It doesn't matter which color you start with. The goal here was just to blend them. And you'll notice that I am going over all of the areas that I just recently painted. I'm not so worried if I get any of the images or any of the alcohol ink, on top of the pages. But really, I just wanted to create a background that kind of gave like an old book look. I wanted it to look like it had been a book that had been sitting for centuries and years and had really old and tattered looking pages, and not so much like I painted it. So I'm just going to go back and forth with my alcohol ink colors. I'm going to color all of that off-white eggshell color that I had previously painted. And again, the reason why I wanted to do this over the painted base versus the flat white is because I know that my colors would have showed more white, the two alcohol inks that I'm using, or more yellow, I'm sorry, if I had done them over a white base versus doing that tinted yellow base. It gives it more of that bronzy sort of tannish tone that I'm going for. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't have to spend too much time layering a bunch of alcohol inks. So adding that layer of paint just helped me to tint it and get the color that I really was going for. So I'm going to finish up here just adding my alcohol inks, again, going all the way around the cup, literally just making sure to get every crevice and every area that has been previously painted and what I had just painted before I moved to the alcohol inks, making sure not to forget your bottom here. And then we're going to let this sit. So I did let this cup sit for a few days before I did anything else with it. You'll notice I haven't yet done epoxy. At this point, you could go ahead and do a couple layers of epoxy so you have a smooth surface. But I decided that I was just going to do kind of all the elements of my cup first before I did epoxy. And epoxy will be kind of the last portion of this entire tutorial here. So I'm going to let that dry minimally at least 24 hours before you add any layers of epoxy. And now we're going to move into our drips. Okay, so what you might be noticing is that this is not the cup that we are currently working on, and that is very true. So somehow I managed to delete the the video of me doing the candlestick drips, but if you guys remember a couple of weeks ago, I did show you how to do drips with glue sticks, with hot glue sticks, and so that is exactly what I did for this Hocus Pocus cup. So you're going to see that cup come up in the end of this clip here, but you're just going to take a white glue stick and your Gorilla glue gun. Remember, you want a glue gun that has a high temp setting. That way you can make sure to get your drips to drip down as far as possible. And in this clip, I am doing a right to left or left to right motion as far as where I'm placing the glue to get it to drip. And that is because I was going with a blood drip for this. For a candlestick style drip, you're going to want to drag your glue stick, your hot glue, from like top to bottom. You can use the heat gun, which I would encourage, to get your drips to go down farther. And if you are going to be using your heat gun, you're going to want to make sure that this is not on an epoxy base, because obviously the heat from your heat gun can make your epoxy layers begin to bubble. So I did end up doing the candlestick look over a non-epoxy base just with all the layers that I did in my alcohol ink after they sat. And so this is what it looked like after, and then you just continue to layer those white glue stick drips until you're satisfied. So you can do as many layers as you please until you're satisfied, and then after that we are kind of good as far as the drip goes. So of course, if you have any questions with regards to the drips, definitely leave those down in the comment section down below. I'll do my very best to answer all of your questions. I know this was a part of the video that I was a little bit bummed that I deleted the clip for, but hopefully you guys were able to watch my drip tutorial, which will be super helpful in helping you do your hot glue drips. So now that my cup has dried as far as the hot glue drips go, I have now moved on to doing kind of a smoky base over just the white hot glue. So again, just like I did in my spooky skeleton Halloween tumbler, we just took a candle, light the candle. I like to use a fork, and that helps me to get some of that black smoke to come up from my candle. You can use any candle that you want, doesn't matter how large, how small, what the fragrance is, any one that you want. And when you put your fork or utensil, metal utensil, in the flame of the candle, it'll start to billow up some of that black smoke, which is going to help to give you that smoky look onto whatever portion of the cup you're looking to do. I am focusing on the hot glue gun drips here for this cup. I'm okay if I get a little bit on, other parts of my cup, but I'm really trying to focus it towards the top half of the cup. So you could also tint your drips, instead of doing this, with the same alcohol inks and paints that you used previously to color your cup. I just decided I wanted to do something a little bit different. The black flame candle kind of tumblers are super popular and always are, and so I'm always looking to take those kind of popular trends and do my own sort of twist on things so that it's not all looking exactly the same. So I hope that that was helpful as far as showing you the drips and kind of how I do that smoky effect look. Again, the smoky effect is definitely something that is not used very often and definitely slept on, so I encourage you to try it even one time. It looks amazing. It looks so cool, and I can't believe I don't do this more often. But after I'm done with all of the kind of smoke effect that I want as much as you want on that drip. I then am just going to clean off any areas that maybe got too dark. You can use a little bit of rubbing alcohol or just your fingers like I'm using here to just kind of clean up any of those areas. It really does come off really quick. You will notice I did go in with 1 coat of epoxy because I wasn't sure if I was going to be adding the smoky drip. 1 coat of epoxy here, and then I'm going to go in with 1 more over the smoky drip before we go into sanding. So at this point, my cup now has 2 full coats of epoxy here, and now it's just time to clean up the rim so that I can do my final coats of epoxy to make sure I have a great seal at my rim here. So you guys know the drill. I am just going to use my little nail file tool, which has been my best friend in helping when it comes to getting that fine line of stainless steel around the rim of my cup. And again, that is to ensure that my final layers of epoxy are going to adhere to the outer rim and not the top rim of my cup, which is more vulnerable, obviously, if someone is putting on and off a lid, or if it happenstance falls out of someone's hands. So I'm just going to go around the top rim of this cup. I will also take a sanding block if I need to do any sort of sanding. Because this is just paper and paint on a cup, really there wasn't any sanding that needed to be done. Even the bottom rim was like perfectly smooth after the 2 coats. So I'm just going to clean this up, that top rim, go around with my craft knife just to make sure I don't have any hot glue kind of stuck to the top, and then that's kind of it. I then put this back on the turner after I've cleaned it up, and I'll do my 2 final coats of epoxy. You guys know that I like to use Amazing Clear Cast Plus, which has that added UV protection to help ensure that my cups stay as white and non-yellowed for as long as possible. And so that is kind of it. I really hope that you guys did enjoy today's tutorial. I know it was a little bit different for me, but I really wanted to get this tutorial out there. And definitely I encourage you to join my Facebook group, Lysha Be Creative Community. Again, we do tutorials every Friday night, and it's always a lot of fun. We're always learning something new. Sometimes we have great successes, other times we have not so great successes, but it's a great learning opportunity. So of course I will link that all down in the description box, and you guys know the drill. Definitely make sure if you loved today's tutorial, give this tutorial and give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again in the next one. Bye!